This will be the call to order the January 5th, 2010 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners in River County. Deputy Floyd was to give the invocation. I did not see him, so I'm going to ask Commissioner Davis to give the invocation, followed by the pledge from Commissioner Wheeler. Would everybody please rise?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to start a new year, the one where we come before you to do the county's business in the public. May we use your wisdom, may we use your knowledge and your guidance, not just today, but all year long. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Under additions and deletions to the agenda, we've had a request from the Attorney's Office to move item 8G to 13B. So 8G will be moved to 13B. And we had a request from the Administrator's Office to pull item 8P, as in Paul. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. We do not have any proclamations or presentations. That takes us to approval of minutes.
Move approval of the regular meeting minutes of November 3rd.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Davis for November 3rd. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Regular meeting of November 10, 2009.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. We have two informational items. Is there any discussion on the informational items? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. We have already moved item G. Are there any other changes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item R, please.
All right, Commissioner Solari has requested item R. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Carries unanimously. Commissioner Solari, item R.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question here is on one of the budget items. This is a memorandum for a miscellaneous budget amendment, and it's on page 112, and one of the items is legal service expenses that have been incurred for the Vosta waterway litigation, and we're asked to approve another $11,000 transfer from the MSTU fund contingencies. And this is a matter that deals with the county and DeVosta over the waterway village, and it's been going on for a fairly long time, and I've been a little frustrated by it in that it seems to be moving extremely slowly, and I'm not sure exactly why it's been moving slowly, but one of the reasons I think is because we've got an outside attorney who has to be in the loop, but as far as I can see, doesn't add anything to it. In the last, well, since it began in 2006, we've spent $77,000 on this attorney. In the last year since I've been on board, we've spent $22,000, but I haven't seen how that outside attorney has added any value to the process. And now we're being asked to spend another $11,000, and again, I don't see either what proposed value he is expected to add to the process or why we actually need him. I mean, my understanding is, and it's been the same for about 10 months, is that we're very, very close to a deal. This is something that's been being worked out internally, and again, as far as I can see, having this attorney involved just adds somebody else who has to be involved in the loop but isn't adding any value to it. So I would like to make a motion today to essentially approve the miscellaneous amendment to the budget number 3 with the exception of item 5, and ask the attorney to come back next week and either explain why it's necessary to have this attorney involved, to be continually involved in the process, or give us a recommendation to do without the outside attorney and save the taxpayers some $10,000 or $11,000. So that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
I would assume that if this is in front of us, Will can probably answer that question today.
I would think. Will, would you like to comment on the status of where we are with the DeVosta litigation?
In July, a conceptual settlement was approved. I had anticipated that DeVosta would submit an amendment to their DRI development order in August. They still haven't done that. When I last inquired, they said they were meeting internally December 17th, and I haven't heard the results of that. I don't believe that they've submitted their application to do the amendment. The amendment basically would implement the settlement that the board approved in July. The Schubert and Bass firm has been involved in reviewing proposed settlement documents that were submitted. Both our staff and Schubert and Bass has been involved in this all along. I'm not sure I'm prepared to say what they can add in the next 3 months other than closing out the case in court where they've represented us for the last 4 years. There have been 2 cases involving DeVosta, one a Bert Harris case and one this concurrency vesting issue.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah. Will, what's the downside to this? If it's not approved and we don't pay them the $11,000, where are we?
Well, we would no longer have the benefit of their services. We still have 3 other cases that they're working on the pending ordinance doctrine. They have filed motions to dismiss for failure to prosecute, but they have to wait 60 days before those motions can be called up to see if there's any action in those cases. I'd be reluctant to take them off those cases entirely because they're very close to being wrapped up.
I know where Commissioner Slary's coming from, I believe, but I don't think now is the time to start. I don't know. I don't want to say nitpicking, but going after this right now.
Well,
we need to bring this to a conclusion.
Jason, is the $11,000, is that for services already billed and invoiced, or is that for future potential work?
That's the estimated amount based on conversations with Will of how much would be spent this year. We've received 1 invoice for the current fiscal year for roughly $900. There may be another pending invoice out there, I'm not sure, but we have not expended the full $11,000.
this is what you're anticipating bringing this thing to a close then?
Well, I think it's going to take 3 months to go through the DRI amendment process, the Planning Commission, the County Commission, get the paperwork to court. So I think there could be 3 fairly intense months of closeout, and I estimated about $3,000 a month to get that done.
Okay. Right.
And Will, just, I guess the question is, we've reached a conceptual agreement.
Right.
So most of the heavy work on this case has been done, and now this is just kind of getting the paperwork finished. Do you feel that's something we can do in-house, or do we still need the outside counsel to wrap this up?
I think we can do 90% of it in-house, but I think we need them to close out the case in court.
The long and short of it, we're going to need them for about $11,000 worth of work to wrap this up, and we're going to be able, if we weren't doing so much of it in-house, we'd obviously have more of a bill.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, I can understand. I think where Bob's coming from, and I think it's reasonable. What he's asking for is that we approve everything but that, and next week we can get a full insight into this if we need it. So I'll support.
So you second Commissioner Slary's motion? Okay. Any comments, Commissioner Flesher? Okay. We have a motion to approve item R, which is a miscellaneous budget amendment. All items on the amendment except for item 5, which is a legal services appropriation, and with instruction to the county attorney to bring back a little bit more detail on this for next week. Any further discussion? We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there's no constitutional officers' work. That takes us to item 10, public items. A public hearing. This is a continued LDR amendment, consideration of proposed amendments to the RS6, RT6, RM6, RM8, and RM10 maximum building coverage regulations, Chapter 911, memorandum dated December 15, 2009, and this is legislative. Good morning, Stan and Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Stan Bowling, Planning Director. The hearing for this proposed land development regulation amendment was first conducted at your December 15th meeting, and at the request of the applicant, This item was continued. The applicant wanted the full five-member board, which is present here this morning. There was no staff presentation given then. There was an invitation for public comment, but none was received. And if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a brief presentation. Indian River County regulations govern on individual single-family lots what can be developed on those lots. We have setbacks, minimum open space, and maximum building coverage. And if you look at a lot from a bird's eye view, once you do the setbacks and you have green spaces in there, you can have building or other impervious area like patios, driveways, that sort of thing. This amendment that's proposed does not change any setbacks. It does not propose to change any of the minimum green open space. What it would change for the higher density zoning districts on individual single-family lots is the amount of development area that can be single-story building. And in other words, it can basically trade off, say, patio or driveway area for some increase in the single-story maximum building coverage on the individual lot. The applicant is Chuck Meckling, and he met with staff several months ago looking at some one-story designs in an RS6 zoned project that he's involved with, as well as Jim Adams. And rather than go with two-story designs, they wanted to go with single-story designs, but they kept bumping up against the RS6 30% maximum building coverage requirement that's in the code now. Staff took a look at our code, and we actually recommended that he file this application to amend and allow a little more flexibility in the higher density districts countywide. So this amendment has gone through the PSAC, where they recommended approval, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, which also recommended approval of this amendment. A couple of reasons why staff believes that this amendment is justified and we should increase the maximum building coverage in certain zoning districts. If you look at all of our zoning districts right now, we have a kind of a gradient going from the larger lot areas, ag areas, all the way to the higher density districts. And as you have a larger lot area, you actually increase the amount of building coverage allowed on a lot so you can have a standard size house. But when we get to RS3, we stopped at 30%, and we did not increase it for the other higher density lots. And when we looked at other jurisdictions in the region and the state, we saw that many of them have up to 40%. Some have none. Martin County, for instance, has no maximum building coverage. They just have minimum open space. We thought that looked reasonable for a single-family house, a single-story house, to allow an average-size house on a 7,000 square foot lot. And so staff is recommending approval to change in the higher density districts, RS6, and the higher density multifamily districts for a single-story home. And again, this would be more or less a trade-off. For instance, if you had a 7,000 square foot lot, it would probably wind up that an owner could have a deeper single-family home. They might want to trade off back patio area for an extra bedroom or something like that. We think in practice you won't see any difference from the street, but it'll give a little more flexibility to owners for single-story homes. We did not want to apply this to multi-story homes because then you start to get into a scale and a concern of massive-looking structures, covering too much of a lot. Again, the PSAC recommended approval, as did the Planning and Zoning Commission. We did make one change based on the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation to ensure that when we're talking about anything that would be treated as a 2 or 3 story home, that it does not include what has been referred to as a bonus room, where someone does kind of a taller single family home and have an attic room or something like that. Okay. So we took care of that based on the Planning and Zoning Commission's concern, and that's reflected in the proposed ordinance. Staff's recommendation is that you all approve this ordinance, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have, and I know that the applicant is here as well.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
I do have one. What is RT6?
We don't have much of it. We have some around the Summer Place area. It's residential 2-family. So it's actually a duplex sort of zoning. And so it's a multifamily zoning for duplex lots. We just have it in a few areas. It's really kind of a holdover from decades ago.
Kind of grandfather something in and keep it legal.
What is the 6 behind it? Residential 2-family, I follow that.
Up to 6 units per acre.
Okay.
Any other further questions? Stan, I have one. Basically, what we're proposing here is to take what might have been normally like a screen porch area and allow that to be converted to interior under
Closed
AC.
building area, that's
Right,
correct.
okay. What happens if someone purchases a house and they've used up the 40% under air, and then they come back a year or two later and want to add a screen porch to their property? Would they not be allowed to do that?
No, they would be allowed if they still meet the other parameters, if they still meet the setbacks and the green open space. So it's not taking away any options from anyone, but the other, the setbacks and green open space requirements are still going to be there. And as long as they have enough area to do both, a patio and, say, an extra building area, they can do that.
Okay.
I think the only problem that you may have, Commissioner, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if they maximize the single story and decide later they want to build a two-story, then the code will not allow that.
That's correct. That'll be their choice. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further questions? At this point, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Let the record show ample opportunity was provided for anyone to speak on this. Commissioners?
Move to approve staff recommendation.
We have multiple motions. We'll go with Commissioner Davis.
He made the cut.
And we'll have Commissioner Wheeler second that motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Takes us to item 10B1, public discussion items. Request to speak from Shirley Wilson regarding the Vero Electric County customers. Mr. Wilson, welcome. I just want to make you aware, under the new chairmanship, we have invoked a 3-minute time limit on any public discussion.
Just for you.
just for former elected officials.
I am not surprised. I just came from another building where I got rid of the 3-minute rule.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
I'd just
Wheeler.
like to confirm this is the right address.
Yes, sir.
But the building that we're in or his?
So you're back out of the city now.
No, yes, sir. You're absolutely right, and I made absolutely sure. Jim Gabbard came up to me at the golf course the other day and said he was going to vote for me for county commission so that I could get the hell out of the city.
And you have 2 minutes left.
Is this a filibuster? I know what these are called. I remember this.
Mr. Wilson, welcome. If we could have your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. My name is Charles Wilson. I live at 1057 6th Avenue in Vero Beach in the county. I made sure of that so that I wouldn't be eligible to run 12 months from now in the city, and they were pretty sure of that too. All right. Commissioners, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm here today to report to you the current situation with the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility, the effect that recent decisions will have on county residents, to discuss the county's role dealing with the issue, and to ask you for your active participation in an effort to bring relief to thousands of your neighbors. As you may have heard, the citizens of Vero Beach elected me to the Vero Beach City Council, not long enough to get my picture up on the wall, however.
Was that recently?
Yes. Unfortunately, I was prevented from completing my elected term and accomplishing the task the voters elected me to do. On January 1st, the City of Vero Beach activated a contract with Orlando Utilities, which included a $50 million penalty if the contract was broken by Vero Beach. That penalty does not apply to this commission or to the Public Service Commission, however. Although I had a right to appeal the decision to end my term, I realized that the city was no longer in a position to solve the electric issue. Even if voters sweep Vero Beach City Hall clean of its elected officials and entrenched bureaucrats in November, as they are likely to do, the issue can no longer be solved by the city. Only this commission now has the means, the need, and the jurisdiction and the opportunity to rescue thousands of Indian River County residents from a hidden tax that threatens the good and welfare of the citizens of Indian River County, and that's why I'm here today. I want to explain to you what the problem is and just how big the problem is. Well, currently, Vero Beach pays one of the highest rates in the state, costing millions, and everyone pays. County residents, Sebastian residents, Town of Indian River Shore residents, Fellsmere residents, South Barrier Island, the Moorings, Grand Harbor, everybody pays, not just Vero Beach. Residents pay in several ways. First, government expenses that are paid by every county resident. If I can have slide, I think, as my technological challenges come up. According to Jason Brown, County Budget Director, the county paid $2,600,000 to Vero Beach Utilities last year. This number has to be adjusted, as you'll see up there, because it includes water and sewer charges, and that is a subject for another day. Estimated electric is somewhere around $2,340,000. The school district reports an annual expense of $2,814,500 for Vero electric service. Indian River Shores were not available for this report, nor was the hospital. Indian River County government, supported by every taxpayer, paid in excess of $5 million to Vero Beach Electric. As you can see on chart 1, the first column are county governments. The second shows the population provided by the Indian River Chamber of Commerce. The third shows the percentage of population. The fourth is that percentage paid in the electric bill paid to the city of Vero Beach. The next column, as you will see, is the amount that we paid last year more than we would have paid had FP&L provided service. The county itself, county residents paid $1,933,192 more than they would have paid if FP&L were providing the service. As you can see, Sebastian paid nearly $500,000. The city of Vero Beach itself just under $400,000. But the total amount paid more than would have been paid had FP&L been the service provider was almost just shy of $3 million. Thank you. The next way that that is paid, is the transfer of funds to the Vero Beach Utilities from the Vero Beach Utilities to the general fund. This year, while we suffered budget shortfalls, everyone else was experiencing layoffs except Vero Beach, and unemployment soared. Vero Beach Electric increased its health care benefits, raised its contributions to the very generous pension funds, considered a government clinic for free health care for its workers, and sought to raise the amount of transfers from its electric utility, largely paid by county residents. According to the budget available online at the city of Vero Beach, they plan to take $8,292,340 from the electric fund and $859,950 from the water wastewater enterprise. That amounts to $5,316,000 of the Vero Beach budget, which is approximately 25% of the city's annual expense, paid for by your constituents, non-Vero Beach residents, who have no say over the operation of this unregulated monopoly and are being forced to pay rates that their neighbors across the street do not pay simply because they are in FP&L territory and not Vero Beach Electric territory. The next and by far the largest drain in our community is the gross cost of power. The City of Vero Beach budget estimated total electric sale income at $110 million for the coming year. A premium of 25% over FP&L, that means $27,500,000 is being paid annually by this community that is completely unnecessary if FP&L were allowed to provide the service. Dr. Faraday of the Indian River Utility Authority estimated 19,000 residential customers from the county, representing 61% of the total. That means that county residents, approximately 43,000 of them that are your constituents, will be paying $16,775,000 a year for 20 years for nothing. That is $882.90 a year per household for nothing but to subsidize the City of Vero Beach government. And why? Next slide, please. The total number of employees for the City of Sebastian is 5.7 per 1,000. Not including the constitutional officers, the county is 4th per 1,000. The City of Vero Beach is 28.4 per 1,000. And even if you subtract the electric employees, it is 22.1 per 1,000. In short, the City of Vero Beach has 4 times as many employees with higher pay and generous benefits. They have no layoffs like Sebastian and the county has had to make, because we are allowing the City of Vero Beach to subsidize itself using the electric system as a means to make our customers pay their bills. As you can see, we have one big problem. So what can we do? First, let me say that this is not the residents of the city of Vero Beach who are at fault. In the last election, 65% of those residents voted to support candidates who favored the sale of the electric system. In a recent TC-POM poll, 83% favored the sale. And let me remind you that Vero Beach residents are also county residents. I have faced the fact that the city of Vero Beach government will do nothing to remedy the situation. Former Mayor Save Abel even said that he does not mind paying a premium and voted not to consider a sale of the plant, even if it was in the best interest of Vero residents. I know that if the electric is sold, the city of Vero Beach cannot maintain its pension funds or its employment levels. We are told that prices are going down, and in fact they will, but they are still not competitive. We are told that in 2012 we can end the agreement, but in that we can end the agreement by 2017. But that also may not be true. According to the city attorney, that will not change the territorial agreement, only the ability for you to tax that plant. We are told that the new Orlando contract has a 10-year out, but that may not be true either. The out only takes place if there is a rate increase that is rejected by the city of Vero Beach. We may hope that FP&L itself files a complaint with the Public Service Commission, but it, in fact, cannot. The contract signed to submit a bid precludes them from protesting. Unless you, the Indian River County Commission, takes action now, you are condemning thousands of your neighbors to live with a contract that will cost $550 million over 20 years. $500 million over 20 years. County government will spend $25 million. County residents will subsidize the city of Vero Beach government $106,326,240. That comes from residents of Sebastian and Fellsmere, the town of Indian River Shores, the county, the moorings, everywhere. Residents will pay $550 million, almost $500 million, more than if they were able to choose another electric provider. Solution. So what do we do? Right now we have a unique opportunity and we must act. You must act right now. First, I'm asking that you direct the county attorney to review the contract between Vero Beach and the Orlando utilities to see if it is valid. Remember, this contract is not just between Orlando and Vero Beach. It affects 43,000 county residents for 20 years. There are many questions about the contract. This week's 32963, for instance, reported that there are 115 differences between the contract that was approved by the City Council and the contract that was signed by the mayor. Seriously calling into question the validity of the contract and the authority of the mayor to sign an agreement that binds 43,000 of your constituents, Indian River County residents who have no say in the operation of Vero Beach Utilities. It is our duty to know for sure if our residents are being treated fairly and legally. The charge of the County Commission is to be the lead governmental authority to ascertain the overall good and welfare of the citizens of Indian River County. In reality, you do have jurisdiction and the buck stops right here. Second, it is clear that only the Public Service Commission can solve this overwhelming problem. It is very rare that the Public Service Commission accepts cases from citizens, but they have accepted a case from Dr. Faraday and Mr. Herron. So second, I am asking that you direct staff to review the possibility of joining these two brave and dedicated citizens in their quest for fairness and become a party to their suit. This action could save years of overpaying by our constituents and bring this matter to a conclusion once and for all. Too long, private citizens like Dr. Faraday and Mr. Herron have given their time and money fighting a battle against entrenched city bureaucrats who have unlimited money paid by you. The money for their lawyers is taken from the electric plant that is charged to you in order to fight you, to keep you from changing their territory. Just recently, Dr. Faraday and Mr. Herron were contacted by the city's new outside Tallahassee attorney, paid for by your constituents, and they were told how much this is going to cost, and they knew that they could not fight this alone. My effort is very small compared to them, but I plan to ask you, the school board, the city of Indian River Shores, to get involved. I've asked the sheriff to help save money, but none of this can happen without this county commission. We private citizens are doing all we can. I know you were hesitant to get involved, but I leave you with this. Thank you. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? Consider what I've shown you. We thank you for your past kind words and your resolutions. But now is the time for more. A commitment to become an active party to demand a solution. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to do it.
Commissioner Slaughter.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Wilson. I would like to make a few points, though.
Okay.
In your presentation, you used words like hesitant to get involved, ask you to get involved, unless you take action now, the buck stops here. And if someone were listening to this on television, they may get the idea that the county commission has not been actively involved in this. And I just want to be clear that the county commission has been actively involved in this. We've been actively involved with this probably for a period of time longer than I've been sitting on this commission, but certainly since I've been sitting on this commission. Back in November, we expanded the authority of our utility advisory committee, which allows them now to address electric utility issues. We also have supported for a couple of years the legislative efforts of first Stan Mayfield and then Deborah Mayfield, and passed resolutions in support of that. We have quietly, a number of us, been working, well, we've talked to many of our citizens. I myself has addressed this issue with Dr. Faraday for the last 2 years at the South Beach Property Owners Association, and have had multiple discussions with Indian River Shores about this and other utility issues. So I just want to lay to rest any idea that we have not been actively engaged in this process.
That's correct. I agree.
Now, as a path forward, I would see no reason, enjoy the opportunity to have our Utilities Advisory Commission take your address and have them discuss this matter. I believe that would be the proper way to go about it, and I'm happy to say that Dr. Faraday, who you've mentioned and has been the lead citizen on this issue for the last couple of years, is a member of that committee. But this time I wouldn't suggest that this commission do anything active other than send it back for action to our Utility Advisory Committee, let them hear your presentation, and I do know for a fact that they've been engaged in most of the points that you've made today, and I believe that'll do a couple important things. One, start the process correctly, and two, maybe take a little of the politics out of this, and would be happy to listen to their recommendations when they make them to us.
Mr. Solari, thank you for correcting me. I thought I mentioned that you had resolutions, and you have. I do not mean to intimate that this county commission has not been active. It has been active, and it's been very supportive, and it has caused things to move along. There's not a soul up here. All 5 commissioners have been helpful in moving this along. However, that does not mean that the time to become not just actively supporting, but an active participant is what needs to change now. And what has caused this change to happen is the January 1st date. The January 1st date in which the city of Vero Beach, fighting a rearguard action, has been able to make its way to start that 20-year contract as of 3 or 4 days ago. I will go, and I understand there's a long process, and I will go through whatever process you say, whether it's before the Utilities Commission or whatever it is. That is the process. I will certainly follow that. It is not political. I believe that I think every one of you understands the situation that these 43,000 customers are in. But what is happening now, that January 1st date, has changed everything. And the 2 deadlines that are important are, number one, the contract that really requires review, and number 2, the Public Service Commission action by Dr. Faraday and Glenn Herron. It is very unusual for the Public Service Commission to take an effort by an individual citizen. And it gives us a unique and only timely opportunity to join them or not. Now, I will go before whatever commission you say, but at some point, this county attorney, I believe, you know what, there's always a bigger fish. And what's happening is this governmental authority, with all the power behind it of the government, unlimited money, are crushing private citizens who are trying to bring this forward. We need the commission to help us.
Just, Commissioner Davis.
Yep. Mr. Wilson, just a quick question. As far as any timing, I understand what you're saying about the timing of the January 1st. Basically, that has triggered, and now the contract is binding, approved in essence, and enforced. And
Unless
so,
it is found illegal.
okay,
Unless it is found to be illegal.
But with that being the case, with the recommendation that Commissioner Solari said I'm not even sure. Have we approved the resolution that provides the the Utility Advisory Committee to take up the?
Yes, we have.
We have approved that.
Amended their scope of responsibility.
Okay, I thought that had to come. I remember us giving direction, but I don't. Okay, we're there.
Sure,
So
it's
that means that as of this next meeting, whenever it is, you could bring this before the Utility Advisory Committee and let them come and give us the recommendation on it. What you put in front of us, or in front of me here, is very intriguing, and as much as I do, I guess, have problems sometimes following through procedure, that clearly would be the best way to go if there's no downside.
Well, I don't see that there's a downside. I think that both of these things could be accomplished at the same time. At the next utility meeting, the county attorney may want to address a couple of the issues that are here to the utilities authority, which includes whether that contract is legal, number one, and number two is what process we have available to us to join the Faraday and Heron complaint before the Public Service Commission. Otherwise, we're trying to start another time and do it ourselves, which could be years from now, while money is flowing out of the city and county by the truckload.
And I understand what you're saying, and I don't want to lose the momentum in moving in a direction that I think that makes a little bit of sense. But with that being said, we have amended the policy to be able to take this issue and to be able to look at it, and so let's utilize the tools we have in place and keep the momentum going.
Well, I will do as directed, as you direct, but I just wanted to bring this information to you to start this ball rolling and in whatever direction you want to roll.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, Mr. Wilson, what specific, step by step, what specifically would you like to see the county do?
What I would like to see the county do is first to assess where we are.
So have the attorney assess the contract.
We need to know where we are so that we know where we're going. So the first step is to know where we are. The second is we're going to have to tell the city of Vero Beach whether we're going to use their territory sometime. And what we found out is that whether we do that now, in 2002, in 2007, or in 2020, we are still going to have to go to the Public Service Commission. There is no way around the Public Service Commission. So the question is whether we do it now or do we do it after we've spent $500 million that we don't need to spend.
Well, what I'm curious about, and I may not understand this completely, but basically you're asking our county attorney to look at a contract to see if the contract is legal. You mentioned illegal or legal.
I think we do that with other suppliers. Our electric system is a supplier. So
yeah,
yes.
just answer that. That's a yes.
Yes.
Okay, and let's suppose that our county attorney says, this doesn't look legal.
Right.
What do you want him to do then?
Well, then we get to make a decision, because the only person the only way that 20-year contract can be voided now is by a circuit court.
So that's where I'm going with this. You're specifically asking us to look at this, find it illegal, have the county legal staff take this to circuit court?
No, the interim step of that is that perhaps the Orlando Utilities and the city of Vero Beach would like to renegotiate parts of its contract that are particularly onerous.
Well, see, the thing that concerns me about this is spending even more money for a contract between two entities that we're not a part of, the Orlando Utilities and the city of Vero Beach. And I'm on city electric also, and I can tell you I don't like my bill either. But I think we need to work to try and solve a problem. And some of the things I've seen, the city's been working toward improving this situation. Now, and I don't know where it's going, but I'm concerned about asking us to use legal staff of the county to ultimately get in a legal battle with the city of Vero Beach, which has a contract with an entity between the two of them that the county, I don't believe, has any legal standing in. Will, am I inaccurate in this, or?
Well, that would be a concern of mine. We're not a party to the contract. Would we have any standing to bring an action to try and invalidate a contract that we're not a party to?
Mm-hmm. So if it's illegal, it should go to the state's attorney.
We are a customer, though, of Vero Electric. So does that not give us standing?
there may be some third-party beneficiary theory that you could have standing, but it seems a little remote to me. And, the idea of me looking at a contract that they've developed, and I only know what I read in the papers, but it sounds like they've spent millions of dollars in coming to this contract. If you want me to get involved in their affairs, then I can assure you I'll probably need to keep Shubin and Bass working on the DeVosta stuff.
Commissioner Fleischer, then.
We work on our stuff or the city stuff?
Mr. Wilson, I appreciate you bringing this information forward, but I share the same concerns as Commissioner Wheeler. I think we might be throwing another zero into those numbers should we get involved with the legal battle as well. And after hearing our attorney advise that perhaps maybe this would not be the best avenue, and he shares those concerns, I invite you to the next Utilities Advisory Committee meeting, and I will be inviting the attorney as well, so that we can review your presentation with the benefit of all the others in the committee.
Thank you, Commissioner. And there is one other alternative, and that is that the city of Vero Beach would have to revote the contract. It's just that's all there would be. They would have to revote the contract. But I don't know how much it'll cost for us to get involved in this issue, but I know how much it costs for us not to get involved in this issue. It's $1 million a year.
Again, you're maybe insinuating that we've done nothing, and we've done an awful lot in support in the care of our constituents in this matter.
I'm sorry, sir. I am not insinuating that you have not done. You've done a great deal. But I point that the role of this county commission is being forced to change now because of the changes in the situation. 2 deadlines. One is the activation of the contract, and number 2 is the limited time that the Public Service Commission has to review the Heron-Faraday.
Just on face value, it sounds as if you want our legal counsel to overstep the bounds and initiate suit and represent our constituents and represent this commission in the thought process of having those fees reduced. Is that correct?
You have 43,000 people that you represent that has not had any legal representation in this action so far.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Slaughter and then Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Chairman, I just think that we've gone as far as we can with this conversation today.
Right.
And I think that the proper way of moving forward is to take it to our Utilities Advisory Committee. Mr. Olson's in the office. He's heard this. I'm sure he'll call a meeting as soon as reasonable, given the circumstances. And again, this is an extremely complex issue. All of us understand that. And we have on the Utilities Advisory Commission Dr. Faraday, who probably understands this issue better than any of us. So I think that committee is the proper committee to be used to flesh out these issues and to suggest a path forward to the commission.
I will be there. Thank you for your time, Commissioners.
Mr. Wilson, it doesn't. I'm kind of a little bit amazed at some of the comments that I'm hearing up here whenever we've taken the city of Fellsmere to task over fire hydrants.
Perfectly capable of doing that in charter government.
Well, and not to throw charter in there, but I'm just talking over fire hydrants, and it's one of those things that, looking at this long term, I agreed we need to go through the procedure. But as far as taking the municipality to task on something like this, I do see the merits in it, and I do understand exactly what you're talking about, and I'm not afraid to move forward, but I think we need to move forward in the right path, and Commissioner Solari has nailed that.
Thank you.
As far as going to the
I will do it.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, one of the things that I would like to point out, and like Wesley bringing up the fire hydrants, which I think is completely different, and also Mr. Wilson bringing up charter, which plays into exactly what I was going to say anyway as a closing here.
Imagine.
This whole thing, I'm afraid, has turned into one political hot football. And in fact, Representative Mayfield, Mrs. Mayfield, just sent out a card that I think was insightful and a lot of misinformation and leading people in the wrong direction, trying to make this a political fundraiser to enrage the public to get behind something, and much of the card, if you read through it and look at it and take a word for word, is inaccurate, accusatory, and a typical political piece. And that's what this is all about, is politics. And I would like to see us work together with the state legislature, with the city of Vero Beach, with the county of Indian River, and Indian River Shores, as we've started to do with the meeting we've had at the Richardson Center, and solve all these problems and do it in a manner where, and as Commissioner Solari said, this is an extremely complicated thing. And it's awful easy to incite people that are only looking at the surface and don't understand the technicalities and everything that leads up to this. And I would like to see us work together to make something positive happen rather than just keep kicking this around the county and creating problems for everybody that would like to get this fixed.
Thank you. Just to summarize on my points, I concur with Commissioner Solari and everybody else here. I think the Utility Advisory Committee is the appropriate place to go. When you go to them, I'd like you to add one more thing to your list for their consideration, is looking at our franchise agreement with the City of Vero Beach. Section 12 does allow the franchise territory to be expanded or contracted to include or exclude lands either through lawfully annexed into the city, or if the service territory agreement between the grantee, Vero Beach, and Florida Power and Light is amended and the Public Service Commission of the State of Florida approves of such changes in the service boundary. Florida statutes do give the Public Services Commission to resolve upon petition of a utility any territorial dispute involving the service areas. So what I'd like to see is, and I understand that the city has asked FP&L to do an evaluation of taking over the entire system. Is that
Sort of, yes.
okay? I would like the county, and you bring this to the advisory committee for their recommendation, is that the county consider sending a letter to FP&L concurrent with their evaluation of taking over the entire city area, to also do a parallel study what it would take for them to take over the unincorporated county area that is currently served by the City of Vero Beach. And if that looks reasonable, then we would ask them to petition the Public Services Commission to amend the service territory agreement as allowed by state law, and that would not, in my opinion, not change our franchise territory agreement, because that in Section 12 allows that territory to be amended if approved by the Public Service Commission. And I think that is one way, one path we can take to address at least the concerns of those folks living in the unincorporated county, that we petition to have the service territory amended, pull them out of City of Vero and placed into the FP&L territory. So I'd like that to be one thing you ask the Utilities Commission. The second thing I'd like to ask is have our attorney review the entire franchise agreement we have with the City of Vero Beach. You had mentioned that Mr. Batunak thought it just meant if that expires, we cannot charge them the 6% franchise fee. My reading of that franchise agreement is it gives them the permission to operate and maintain and use county land for their utility services. And upon non-renewal of that franchise agreement, I'm not sure the City of Vero Beach would have a legal right to have their equipment on county land, and I'd like the county attorney to review that so that we know where we stand on that franchise agreement. Because I think that'll factor into this down the road, that if they do not have permission to operate, maintain, install utility lines on county land, then that'll naturally push us to Florida Power and Light. So I'd like to see the county attorney review our franchise agreement.
I appreciate that, and that gives us a good example as to the two things, because all these roads lead to two places, the county attorney and the Public Service Commission.
Mr. Chairman, on your issues there, you're giving the county attorney direction, and perhaps it may solidify or give a little more push if that were in the form of a motion. And I would move that if you would like to, those two issues that you just, the one about him going back to the utility advisory, but the other one is direction to the county attorney.
And only to review our franchise agreement, not the
city, yes.
And Charlie, I understand where you're going, but let's take this step now.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have the attorney weigh in on our franchise agreement, what the legal ramifications are if that franchise agreement is not extended after 2017. And if Commissioner Davis says your motion,
yes, sir,
I will second that. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may add, what this does is it just moves it to basically the same level at which at where we are with the other utility issues. I mean, they've reviewed our water and sewer and are trying to make some educated decisions based on the franchise agreements that are coming due in 2012.
And we need to, March 2012, we need to make a decision.
Exactly. So I think this is very appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Wilson, thank you for your presentation, and, please make sure you get on the advisory committee agenda for the next meeting. Okay? Thank you.
And congratulations on holding to the 3-minute limit.
Commissioner Davis is in charge of the timer. I don't know what happened there.
They're friends.
Okay, departmental matters. That takes us to Human Resources, the county attorney selection. Welcome, Mr. Sexton.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Jim Sexton, Human Resources Director in River County. Today is the day that we select the new county attorney. As you know, each commissioner had their interviews with the top 3 candidates between December 17th and December 22nd. So today we're here to discuss and select the candidate that the board would like to hire. And then after the board makes a hiring decision, then we need to decide who will make the offer, who will negotiate the agreement. That would come back to the board for ratification. And maybe thirdly would be a start date, whether you would want the employment of the new county attorney to run concurrent for X amount of time with Will's remainder of his tenure. There's several ways we could go about it today. We could entertain a motion right now, or we could have each commissioner discuss which candidate they like and maybe why they like them to try to sway others, and maybe at the end of this session that we get a 5-0 vote one way or the other to hire our new county attorney.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Alan Polakowicz.
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for Mr. Polakowicz from Commissioner Wheeler, and that is seconded by Commissioner Flesher and Commissioner Davis. Discussion?
Yes, just to make sure that I'm clear on the process moving forward, I'm assuming that in the event that we nominate somebody and that individual gets the support of a majority of the board up here, then we go into contract negotiations with that individual, and should those fall out, then in that instance, then we'd be right back here perhaps in another 30, 60 days. That's right. And so I appreciate the motion, but I think we really ought to have 1, 2, and 3 so that we can at least not be in this situation where we can say, okay, it didn't work out with our candidate number 1, now we need to go to candidate number 2. That's just my suggestion, but there's a motion on the floor in a second. Okay. So,
discussion? Commissioner Flesher?
I think we should be able to go forward with the motion and make a second motion for an alternate.
Okay. Commissioner Slurry, any comments?
Not this time.
Okay. I would like to just make a few general comments. I think we had 3 very, very well qualified candidates. I don't think we could really make a bad decision here from the candidates we had. I know in my interviews I identified some strengths and some weaknesses in all 3. Overall, again, I felt all 3 were very qualified. I'd feel very comfortable picking any one of the 3. So, kind of with that, I think we can come to a conclusion here. But I just did want to thank all the candidates. It was a very, interesting process, a lot of good discussion during my interview, and I'm sure all of us. So anyway, any further discussion?
I'd just like to, echo what you just said. I think I agree with you. 3 good candidates.
Okay. Okay. Is anyone from the public wishes to comment at this point in time?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just I feel like, and I don't mean to belabor this, but I really feel like we owe it to the individuals to at least let them know what I was thinking whenever I made my decision and what I based it on.
Absolutely.
So okay I started out the interview process, and I'll just basically put them there. Mike Zito, what his strength and his weaknesses. I mean, really what I appreciated about Mike is the fact that him coming from the attorneys with the Sheriff's Department and then going from the Sheriff's Department to county administration, it gives him the opportunity to see the other side of the institution in which we work and to see how the legal department affects that both positively and negatively. So, based on that, I did like that. One thing that really I think hurt Mr. Zito, in my opinion, a little bit would have been the fact of some more, I would say, real world or outside of the bureaucracy. I think that the opportunity for some of these candidates to see what it's like in the real world versus a county attorney's office is very important, and important to bring that private business to the forefront. Then secondly, Thomas Spencer. Probably out of all the candidates that were interviewed, Mr. Spencer, in my opinion, he had the best interview. He was the most prepared. I was very impressed with his institutional knowledge of being a county attorney. I was very impressed with his ability in the private sector and what he has put forth, and there's no doubt in my mind that he will be a county attorney somewhere someday. He certainly answered the questions in a fashion that I like to hear, and it wasn't him just playing to me. It was clearly his compassion and his convictions. Finally was Mr. Polakowicz. What I liked about Alan is that Alan has been with the hospital district. I do like the fact that of his local community involvement. That certainly, in my opinion, speaks volumes of somebody. And also, I really like the fact that he's been in the private sector, not just as a member of a law firm, but also in dealing in the financial institution now with a local bank. I think that with his institutional knowledge, with his private practice, and as well as with his community involvement and dealing in one of the most difficult situations that I think our economy is seeing right now in the banking industry, I think that combination is probably going to be the best in managing an office. I think that combination is going to be the best for the business community whenever they have legal issues come forward, and I think that process is probably going to be the best for Indian River County. And so, with that being said, I congratulate all the candidates, but I will be supporting Mr. Polakowicz.
Okay. Any other commissioners want to review their interviews? I don't mind either, because I would like to highlight some of the points. I think they all...
I can, I'm not going to belabor it, but I probably agreed with everything Wesley said. I was extremely impressed with Mr. Spencer and his background and his trial experience, and I even made a phone call or two over to Pinellas County, and he came with very high recommendations. I think he's a real professional and a go-getter, and a man that would stand his ground and has integrity, and I can say the same things about Alan. In fact, I had occasion to use Alan when I was sheriff, and his character and is impeccable, and everything he said, Wesley said, is his involvement in the community, hospital, banking, etc. I think, and plus local knowledge and so on and so forth, and respect of other attorneys. I had many attorneys tell me that Alan is an attorney's attorney. So, just to keep it brief.
Commissioner Slaughter?
I'll weigh in a couple words. I'd actually like to start by thanking Mr. Sexton. I think this whole process has, from start to finish, has run very well. I think he made it very easy for us. The number of qualified candidates that we were presented with was very good, and he managed the process extremely well. So for that, I certainly thank him. And I don't want to say anything negative about any of the three candidates. I think they are all wonderful choices, and again, I don't think we could go wrong with either. I'm not sure that if I made the nomination, I would be nominating the one that was nominated first, but I'm certainly in no way against him. So I'm going to support the motion. And I'm just happy that we were able to get this far just smoothly, and thank everybody involved in the process.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to discuss the whole process that we went through. I just want to say that, again, thank you, Mr. Sexton, for moving this right along as swiftly as you have. I did share some concerns that we were narrowing it down very quickly. It did make the task very difficult. Each one of the applicants were extremely thorough and very strong, and the competition was very stiff, and I commend them all for being involved with the process. It was difficult to discern every weighted value in just 2 hours' time. Counsel Spencer is a very interesting individual with a lot of courtroom time, and a great read that he provided for us, even though that was not requested. He ensured that we did have a read because he heard that I was interested in reading at least one of their writings. Counsel Zito, I worked with him in the sheriff's office and saw him begin the sheriff's office legal office, as well, a very strong candidate, and Alan Plakowicz. I worked with in the local community, and I think they're all three fine candidates, and all of them want to see something very positive for this county and hit on all of the aspects that we would like to see going forward in saving this county some money in the legal action, and the cost accountancy was very high on all three regards, but I stand by my motion for Mr. Plakowicz.
Okay. I kind of ditto everybody's comments so far. One of the things that appealed to me about Mr. Zito was his familiarity with our staff and our issues. It would have been a very smooth transition coming over. I think Mike also has a lot of strength in right-of-way acquisitions, and which we're heavily involved in now. Mike talked a lot about prioritizing responsibilities and better communication between the attorney's office and administration and staff heads, and I thought all those were very strong points. A couple of things that, again, reiterating what everybody said about Mr. Spencer, very, very impressive trial background, has experience in managing some attorneys. One of the things he spoke to me about, and also Mr. Plakowicz, which I found very interesting, was they both talked about the client-attorney relationship, and that's really what we're looking at here. We're looking to hire an attorney. We are the client. We're looking for legal advice. Mr. Spencer had a very good quote. He mentioned to me that when you go to trial, you're basically putting your advice on trial. So if you give your client good advice, you'll win at trial. If you give them bad advice, you're going to do bad at trial. So I thought that was very moving. In talking to Mr. Plakowicz, he also spoke of the client-attorney relationship. He mentioned that if you're unhappy with your attorney, you shouldn't have to pay a large severance package to get out of that relationship, that you should be able to end it without a big cost burden hanging over you, which I think is very critical to what we're looking to do here. Two quotes from Mr. Plakowicz that I thought really put me over the edge to make my decision is, one, he said, business should not be held up by legal work. And I thought that was very apropos, that when we have things coming forward, we need the attorney's office to provide us with what we need in a timely manner and keep things moving. And then finally, probably the one last thing that took me over the edge when I asked Mr. Plakowicz to sum up why I should hire him to be the county attorney, he talked about his experience and demeanor in solving problems. And he said what he strives to do is to reach mutually resolved solutions that are better than winning a fight. And I think from the county, that's what we want to portray as being fair to all the people we deal with, be it a citizen in a right-of-way or a corporation or whatever. I think we want to be fair and to treat them with respect, but also keep in mind we are looking out for the taxpayers. So I thought that the mutually resolved solutions really took me over the edge between the candidates. So, any other comments? We have a motion from Commissioner Wheeler, I believe, seconded by Commissioner Flesher, to select Alan Plakowicz to instruct staff to begin negotiations with Mr. Plakowicz for the county attorney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Commissioner Davis, did you want to add anything to follow up on your earlier point?
No, I mean, if we want to move forward with that, unless you want me to, I mean, I don't, it didn't sound like anybody wanted a number 2 choice or a number 3 choice.
I'm all for having a succession if you would like.
Okay, well then I have to go with Mr. Spencer and then Mr. Zito, in my opinion.
All right, so we motion
I
for
second that.
Spencer and Zito, seconded by Commissioner Wheeler. Commissioners, any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, the motion is for ranking of Mr. Spencer as the number 2 choice, Mr. Zito as number 3. We'll go ahead and proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Jim, again, thank you for your work on this. And
We also talked about the question of whether he'd work concurrently. And
correct.
I wouldn't mind discussing that for a minute.
I think we need to kind of contract terms and any overlap, things like that, correct?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'd actually suggest that we have at least a month's overlap.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Davis?
I asked him that. I asked all the attorneys that went in the interview process, and according to Mr. Plakowicz, there are clearly, with his vacancy, there's going to be a gap to fill. He said it will take him some time, in the event that he is chosen to move forward. But he said, 30 days should be plenty of time for him to look over somebody's shoulder and learn where the paper clips are. And he says he understands law and how to manage an office. So the 30-day period is what he suggested whenever I asked him that question.
Okay.
Did he mention the paper clips, or you ad-libbing?
I added that. He said file folders, and I said and paper clips, and he said yes. So.
All right. Commissioner Fleischer, any?
No, I had the same question, and Alan did state that a month would be ample, but it might even be even shorter than that.
Yeah,
He
I
said
hadn't
he
done
needed
2
a
to 3
minimum
weeks,
of 2 to 3 weeks would be a minimum.
Okay. All right. Do we need a formal motion for this, or is it something we just instruct?
I think basically that'll be in the
Just
language.
Jim,
of the contract.
as you work on the contract? Okay. Do we want to establish a max? We've established a range of total benefits that was misreported. The actual range that we voted upon was 125 to 175. And Jim, can you just review for us again what that dollar amount includes as far as within that range?
Well, there's several ways we can break it down in a range of 125 to 175. And what Mr. Plakowicz put on his application was, minimum you accept, he put the 175 total package. So if I were to give you an example of what a 175 total package would look, that includes any deferred comp, any car allowance, any salary. That also includes the county's cost for retirement, Social Security, health insurance, workers' comp, et cetera. It's the whole gamut of everything, the cost out the door. For an example, if we were going to go $175,000 package, it would look like a salary of $136,000 without car allowance, without deferred comp. Once you add in the health insurance and all that stuff, it gets you to $174,990. If during negotiations Mr. Plakowicz wants to carve it up a different way and says, well, give me X amount in base salary, put X amount in my deferred compensation, give me an auto allowance, those ways the county does save some money. If we put in an auto allowance of $4,200, for example, we don't pay retirement benefits on that. So we're able to pay roughly $117,000 with a deferred comp of $16,500 with an auto allowance of $4,200, and it'll get you to the same total cost of $175,000 out the door. So I think my goal, at least unless I get different marching orders today, is to make sure we stay under that $175,000 line, and then work with Mr. Plakowicz to carve it up however he's comfortable in settling the agreement, but to not exceed cost.
Okay.
And I don't think it's very appropriate for us to go much further than this, because in the event that in any negotiation, you always have to have the third party, and clearly that's us. So let them hammer it out, then come back, just like how the automobile dealerships do it.
Does anyone else have any comments on that? I don't think we need to vote on that. We've already established
No.
the
And we can
maximum
probably
range.
get it hammered out to where we can bring you a contract to look at by January 19th meeting, or at the latest, the February 2nd meeting. And I'll speak with Mr. Plakowicz, and I don't know if he would give his notice now that he's been motioned and approved, or if he's going to wait until there's a ratified contract by the board, then give his notice.
I'll make a prediction once we take a vote, but I'm just.
That would be
that's what I.
But Jim, I would see if you can't work with Mr. Plakowicz, come back on the 19th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that way, if there's going to be some overlaps, I'm sure if we approve it on the 19th, Mr. Plakowicz will have to give a couple, 3 weeks notice to his current employer, and then that kind of shortens our overlap window with, Will, your last date is March 16th? 17th.
But who's counting, right, Will? I mean, not that he knew that off the top of his
And
head.
how many hours is that? No. So if you can, Jim, let's shoot for the 19th and get this moving forward.
The other thing I'd like to say, I've had a couple of emails, and I've had people comment to me that were a little upset because of the salary range that was in the paper that was mistaken.
Right.
And, so I hope Henry.
I told him on multiple occasions.
He was writing as we were discussing the numbers, so I think it's going to be corrected.
Okay, Jim, do you need any more information? You have your,
I'm
what you
good
need
to
to
go.
go.
Got my marching orders, I'm good to go.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Jim.
you. All right, that takes us to item 12I, Public Works, staff update on the Sector 3 Beach Renourishment Project. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you. Jonathan Gorham, Coastal Resources Manager. In this update here, as we are moving along on the Sector 3 beach restoration project, we're now finalizing both the permit and the contract items for a February 1st initiation of construction of Phase 1 of the project. Our state permitting process at long last is nearing completion. The notice of completeness for our state DEP application was received on December 22nd, and the department staff have committed to issuing us our draft permit and the notice of intent to issue by this Friday, January the 8th. Following the publication of that notice and a 14-day comment period, the department will issue the final permit. The erosion control line establishment process, which again is outside the permitting umbrella, but is also required for our notice to proceed on the project, will also be completed by February 1st. The hearing officer's report has been completed, and the department, DEP, will be issuing a resolution for the establishment of the erosion control line by the end of this week. Upon approval of the resolution by the board and the recording of the ECL documents in the public records, that will complete the establishment process for the erosion control line. On the contractual side, staff expect to bring a recommendation to you for award of contract to Ranger Construction and a change order to reflect changes in the work since the project was bid at the January 19th meeting. Staff will also be preparing a work order to our contract with Coastal Technology Corporation to cover the construction phase services also at that January 19th meeting. That will leave only one final item for the notice to proceed to the county from the Department of Environmental Protection, and that is a pre-construction conference, which is required to be held at least 14 days prior to the planned start date of construction, and to include DEP, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission staff, the county staff, the contractor, and engineer. We're scheduling this conference, and we'll make sure we have it scheduled sufficient to allow for that February 1st start date. And finally, on a personal note, I wanted to take an opportunity here. I'm going to be leaving the county this Friday to work on marine research and conservation here in Florida full-time. I wanted to take the opportunity to say how much I've enjoyed working with everyone here at the county, and in particular how proud I've been of the sound and environmentally responsible way that the county has executed their coastal protection projects. We recall the first two projects, the beach restoration projects the county did, received both national and state recognition, and I'm really confident that the Sector 3 will be equally successful.
Well, and Jonathan, I think I can speak for all of us here. We greatly appreciate all the hard work you did. I do know that you received a personal award from the Florida Beaches and Shores Association for the work you've done. I know you've made many presentations to your peer group and other professionals, and have represented the county just very, very appropriately. And you are correct. Our beach projects have been exceptional. I think we've had a lot of challenges sometimes with accesses and things like that, and you and James have worked hard to overcome those and bring successful projects forward. So We certainly wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. I imagine it's going to involve a little jumping on the back of turtles still that you've been doing, and good luck with that, and thank you for your service to the county, Jonathan.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I don't want to just say ditto, but really, everything that Commissioner Brown was very appropriate. And, you know, it's interesting to see whenever you have I would say a lightning rod issue, like beach restoration. And when I say lightning rod, it takes us, you know, a quick conversation at the local cafe, and you've got everybody involved. But you've handled it as far as professionally bringing it forward to make the projects come to fruition, as well as, you know, doing them first class. And so good luck with your new endeavors, and I'm sure we'll be in contact. Perhaps you'll be doing some research on our sand about the turtles. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Well, before you leave, any questions on the Sector 3 update before we let Jonathan slide off? Okay. Jonathan, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That takes us to 12J, Utility Services, Item 1, Renewal of License Agreement for Use of County Property between Sea Oaks Property Owners Association, Inc. and Indian River County, memorandum dated December 28, 2009.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to make a motion for a staff recommendation with this, and with one comment that this is, I guess, our second contract with Sea Oaks on this, and I believe that this contract was much better written than the first. There's good language in here which I think gives the county everything it needs for this, and just like to say a job well done to those involved.
Okay, happy to second that.
Mr. Chairman, just
Commissioner Wheeler was second on that. Comments, Mr. Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I just, in light of, and I see where we may use this in the future, depending on what happens, perhaps with the reuse and everything. In the event there's any chance of the issue with the Vero Beach utilities moving forward faster than a 5-year period, I don't know, perhaps, is this contract too long? Or should we do it on an annual basis with automatic renewal versus a 5-year with the renewal?
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. What we have there currently right now is a wastewater facility. It's permitted as a wastewater facility. We're never going to use it as a wastewater facility. However, it is available, and we will consider using it as a reuse repump facility. It's not inconsistent with whatever is planned by Sea Oaks. It'll actually merge together nicely in that sense. Frankly, we have the ability to make that transition at any time that wouldn't be inconsistent with what Sea Oaks has in mind. So it is a partnership. It works either way we want to work it like that.
No, that's just the 5-year lease side of it.
The 5-year lease it's a period of time that just, you know, it's less than the 10 years that we had before, but it is automatically renewable if both parties want to use it. Now, I will say this. Part of the agreement that currently exists, if there is an inconsistent usage that the county needs in the process, we have that ability to basically recall that contract, but we don't foresee that in the future.
And it's even stronger than that, which is what I meant about the language in the contract. It says that this agreement may be terminated with a 9-month notice by the county if either the county seeks to use the property, which will make the SOPOA's use contractable. Yeah. So we're covered, I believe.
I do want to, one thing I want to give credit where credit's due on this thing. George Glenn of the County Attorney's Office punched it out pretty good on this thing, so did a very good job on that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any comment from the public on this? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. 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 Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Item J2, River Club at Grand Harbor, replace polybutyl water services, approval of work authorization directive number 2009-003, Shelter and Sons Construction Company, Inc., UCP, number 4032, memorandum dated December 14th, 2009.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Slurry. Is there any discussion? Eric, anything you need to add here?
What? I'm sorry.
Is there anything you need to add?
No, the only comment I want to make is that we're trying to do this in a manner that facilitates them doing some paving in the area. That's why we want to do it a little bit quicker than we would normally do it.
Okay. So. All right, thank you. No further discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Item 3, the Spoonbill Marsh Wetland Facility, UCP 2785, change order number 4 for Tim Rose Contracting, Inc.
Move to approve staff recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Flesher. I did have a question here, Eric. has all this work now been completed, and this is just the follow-up, or
That's
where?
exactly right.
Okay.
Again, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. The project is substantially complete at this point. In fact, we're actually pumping river water as we speak on this thing. We will probably have next week, if DEP can get out there, they're going to do an inspection and final review of everything. So it's virtually complete at this point. In fact, we're actually at a point of operation, so it's where we want to be.
Will, is this something staff can organize a tour for the commissioners, come out and view the project without violating sunshine law? Can we just, since it's already voted and approved, we're just looking at the project operation, is that something we can?
As long as there are not matters that you would discuss out there that you would be voting on in the future, if it was just a tour to become aware of what's out there, I don't see a problem.
Always invite the press too, couldn't you?
Yeah, we could invite, Eric, I'd like to see you organize that at some point, and just, instead of having 5 different field trips wasting everybody's time.
You beat us to the punch. We actually had that in mind.
Okay,
because
great.
this is kind of a unique opportunity. What we wanted to do with this thing is basically say, there are different ways to deal with resources to create assets as opposed to liabilities, and it worked out well.
And I'll just make sure Commissioner Davis isn't allowed to talk, and that way we'll...
No problem.
Yeah, right. Okay. We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Fletcher for staff recommendation. No further discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. J4, Regional Residuals Dewatering Facility Operations Contract Extension, memorandum dated December 22, 2009.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any discussion or questions on this?
Yeah, I do
Commissioner
have,
Sawyer?
what was the original contract gone into, Eric?
The original contract, if you're talking about the ending date,
No, when did it begin and end?
well, the original contract, we've actually been using them for several years, since 2006, when we originally bid this thing out. The idea was at that time to back away from using the current facility. It actually gave us call it a more odor-free operation. What we're doing at this particular stage, incidentally, we are bidding this out for the next renewal. And in reality, the bid will actually be on the street at the end of this week, first of next week. We may not actually need to extend this with them to utilize that, but we wanted to kind of hedge our bet just in case something went wrong on the bidding process. But in the process of doing this thing, we're hoping that we'll bring back to the Commission in February the new bids. If that's the case, we'll work with Synagro, and basically, if they're not the winner, say, we appreciate the offer, that, but we've got a new team.
Well, thanks, that's what I was unaware of,
Yeah.
the idea that we were going for a new bid.
We are going for bid. It'll actually be on the streets next week.
Given this started in 2006, it seemed like it was getting towards the high end of things, and that we might be able to
It
do a little
was.
better now.
It's kind of a unique process that they use. It's a centrifuge system that's probably going to be what's utilized out at the new facility out there. But that new facility, incidentally, just as a point of reference, is going to be completed the first week in March. We're looking to also do a little bit of a kind of an open house out there. It's one of those things, we made a promise to the Gifford community. If the Commission may recall, this was a horrible situation we had for a long, long time at the central plant. We made a promise to them that we're going to move this and fix this process up, and we're going to be good to that promise.
Thank you.
Good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. J5, reuse rate study and rate recommendation, memorandum dated December 28, 2009. And Eric, or Cindy?
New team?
All right, new team. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioner. Cindy Carenti, Assistant Director of Utilities, and I have with me today Dan Anderson. Dan Anderson is with CDM, and he's the author of our rate study that is in front of you. Do you have any particular questions, or
Why don't you give us a summary of the report?
a little
Thank
bit?
you.
We actually asked CDM to take a look at our both our reuse rates and our reuse expansion program in general. The existing rate we have was established back in 1999. At that time, reuse was thought of more as a disposal process for our effluent from our wastewater plants. With the changing environment, with the water and looking at shortage of water supplies and more creative ways to use existing water supplies. Reuse water or reclaimed water from the wastewater facilities is now looked at as a commodity. Presently, we do have 7 golf courses in our community that use our reclaimed water for irrigation purposes. We don't expect that relationship to change any. However, now that this is looked at as more of a commodity than just a disposal process, we felt it was time to review our rate structure, review our program, and look at recouping some, using this as a revenue source for the utility, as well as that alternative water supply usage.
Okay. And can you go a little bit into what the proposed rate is?
Yeah, I think I'll let Dan go into that a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, Dan Anderson with CDM. What we did was to project rates annually over a 5-year period. A high rate this fiscal year, decreasing over the next 4 years. We are recommending that a uniform rate be adopted for the 5-year period of 56 cents per 1,000 gallons. The reason that we recommend an equal annual rate for that period is to send a pricing signal to the customers so that they are able to budget and they have a little bit of certainty as to what the rate will be in future years so that they can plan ahead. It's one of the rate-making precepts that you want to have a gradually changing or constant rate over a rate study period so you don't have the rate bouncing around and a level of uncertainty associated with that.
Now, my understanding is that our current rate, we are having an annual deficit in the reuse budget. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, based on the cost of service analysis that we
Okay, and that's just being picked up through other utility revenues?
From wastewater user charge.
Okay. In 2010, it looks like we'll still have a operating deficit at the 56 cents per 1,000, but then apparently an operating surplus over the next 4 years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That will make up for that.
Okay, and then will that surplus, will that make up the first year deficit? So will it, over the 5-year period, will it be revenue neutral?
It will be essentially that. You haven't adopted the rate effective October 1st. You would be adopting it somewhat later, so there may be a remaining deficit. My recommendation would be to come back every 2 years and review the rate, make sure that you're tracking along as we projected. As we get further out in time, it's difficult to project, say, inflation, what have you. So we would recommend every 2 years to fine-tune that as needed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, any questions of staff?
Yeah, what specifically is it from the spending side that's put us into the deficit with?
What we have performed, Commissioner, is a cost of service analysis. So historically, you've had a rate of 15 cents per 1,000 gallons, and now we have actually looked at an allocation of your wastewater treatment plant cost center. We said, let's carve out this much that relates to the reclaimed water system. Same approach with your wastewater collection system. We've gone through a very detailed allocation. So we have now developed a cost of service analysis that I don't know that has been done previously, but we can tell you with a pretty good degree of certainty today that this is what it costs you and will cost you going forward. So the differential between what you've been charging historically and what we calculate today as your full cost of service is that deficit. But that's a natural evolution of a system if you haven't had a cost of service analysis in the recent past.
Yes, when we did the 15 cents, we did not have a rate study done. It was just an estimate at the time. We've been subsidizing reuse for some time with wastewater, so we looked at the cost center to see what it really costs to deliver reuse water.
And part of it was we had to kind of give it away.
We had to give it away because we had to dump it.
So we weren't dumping it into the river.
Yes, sir, and that's somewhat of a natural evolution of reclaimed water. Historically, it's been viewed as effluent disposal, but now we are recognizing more and more that it's a valued resource.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Commissioner Suarez.
Would it be possible to put the table that's on 4-3 up?
What page is that?
It's section 4.3 in the report.
Oh, okay.
What page in the backup is that?
I have it on there.
217, I think. Or no, there's 4-2, 4-1.
I think it's page 216 is what he's looking at. It says 4-3 on the bottom, but up top it's table 4.2.
216.
Yeah. It'd be page 216 in the backup.
I think we can start with what Mr. Baird said, is that we have been subsidizing the reuse for some time, and I think it's time, and the market is right and the environment is right, is to stop the subsidization. And I think that we all realize now that water is an extremely valuable commodity in Florida. I think this gets us a step, but doesn't get us quite there. I don't think this really covers all the costs. If you look down at the bottom line, the rate per TG required, your numbers came up with the 84 cents the first year, then the 54, 47, and what, as I understand what you did, you added 5 of those numbers together, and that gave you an average of about 56. I got 57 cents, but it gives you an average. I've got 2 difficulties with that. The first is, on a discounted cash flow basis, you're still not going to cover all the costs because it's weighted heavy to your deficit is weighted heavily to the first year. So a discounted cash flow model would suggest that if you really wanted to cover your costs, you'd have a somewhat higher rate. The second thing is, I believe, and I agree with you, that we ought to give the market some certainty, but I also agree that the cost of reuse with the things the DEP are doing and other environmental agencies is going to increase at a faster rate than we might expect, so that our costs over this time period are going to be greater than we're anticipating today, so that at the end of the day, that suggested rate of 0.56 doesn't actually cover all the costs.
That's certainly a possibility, sir.
And I also think that we haven't quite adjusted for all the capital costs on the front end, which may be fair, maybe not. So I'm going to actually suggest, and I'm going to make a motion that we go with a somewhat higher rate. And I'm not going to say that the rate I'm going to come up with is any more justified than this, but looking at your other tables, you show the rate of other municipalities and other counties. I would feel better with a rate of about 70 to 75 cents per 1,000 gallons, and I'm going to make that in the form of a motion that we go ahead and accept the bulk of the rate study, but go with a number of 75 cents per 1,000 gallons. And I do want the Commission to understand that at the end of the day, this will cost a certain number of customers a little more money, but it'll save some water customers money. I mean, I'm not looking to increase the total revenues to the county on this. You know, when we increase cover what I believe is our full costs on the reuse side, we can reduce our costs a little bit on the water side. So the net to the utility department will actually, at the end of the day, be the same, or could be the same. I'm just looking to try to withdraw the subsidy from the wastewater and give us a little bit greater clarity on what we're paying for.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Sari to accept the report with an amendment to increase the rate to 75 cents per 1,000 gallons. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion, but you know, that's a fairly good increase percentage-wise. And I'd like our consultants to comment on that.
Well, sir, my comment would be that the way I do rate studies is a cost of service basis. And what you are essentially doing is working up the actual cost, actual estimated cost to provide the service under study. And so doing so, we can justify in each of the years the numbers indicated in Table 4-2. And, you know, my thought was that we could average those, but that is a local policy issue. If adopting the individual rates in each year would more closely match your policy conditions here locally, that is an overriding guideline.
If I'm looking at this correct, I mean, it would still keep us lower than some of the surrounding reuse, even at the 75 cents.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Eric or Cindy, maybe, you know, when we do these reuse contracts, how long are they for?
All of the current contracts that we have right now have different terms. Some are 10 years, some are 20. There's a few that are 40, but they're all rolling contracts. So they have, similar to the franchise agreements you've been dealing with, they have a notification policy in them. Each one of our contracts is different on the date of that notification. So currently all of the existing contracts, the 7 we have, are all currently in effect, and they all read generically that the prevailing rate is what they will pay. We don't have any contracts currently that have a specific rate mentioned in them. So all of our, I don't believe there's any, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the notification year for each one of those 7, but they're all currently in effect, and some of them have just recently rolled within the past year or so as well.
Okay, I guess my question is I understand what Commissioner Solari is saying, but at the same time, some of the projections in here are assuming new customers come online, and I'm a little hesitant to have the starting price so high that they may decide they can find it cheaper or continue to use their wells or other things. And then if we can't find customers for the reuse, we'll have a higher cost of having to treat it somehow or do something else with it to meet the new standards DEP's putting on us for total dissolved solids and things like that, and discharge to the river. So I'm a little hesitant to jump all the way to 75. I think that is a pretty big jump. I think
it is a pretty significant jump, and staff is not recommending that per se, at least at this time, because I think we need to give our current customers some heads up. I have asked to not even make this rate effective till April 1, so we can at least give them a few months' notice for whatever rates adopted, recommended today.
I didn't know that. I thought we were going to. Let me say a few things. First of all, we had to make some assumptions moving forward in projections. And I think that's why we do rate studies, to see what it costs and to be fair to the consumer, as well as make sure we cover our costs. There's a few things we could change here. I think we've been extremely conservative on our renewal and replacement, at 5%. We could change that to 10%. We're also got to remember that we're impacting some people right now, like golf courses, a lot of the golf courses in which are having a hard time surviving in this environment. So we want to be careful. It's a delicate balance. The rate is definitely low, but we feel we run our utility very efficiently, and we want to get a rate that's fair and equitable and delivers. I think that if we looked at a few of the factors, Commissioner Solari has a very good point that if you look at the first year, the huge deficit, if we plug in a cost of money as far as getting that back in future years, that may all help. Also plug in maybe a 10% renewal and replacement rather than a 5%. I think we should have a justifiable rate. I'm scared that we're just picking something out of the air. We were extremely conservative here because of our concerns with the economic situation in our community, and most of our customers right now are golf courses. We're also going to be trying to get more customers, which benefits them as well as us. Right now, the DEP is wanting a lot of these golf courses to get off wells and get on reuse, so we're not just dumping water, so it helps everybody involved. I think that if we're going to make this change, maybe look at some of the things and assumptions here, make the change, and have something that we can defend and be fair. That would be my concern.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Just a question. I'm looking at the City of Vero Beach, if I'm reading it's 88%. South Martin Utilities was $1.10. I don't know what their capacity is or how much of it they're selling, but in your research, did you find whether that created a problem with them with disposing of their reuse at that higher price, or is there an established waiting list for reuse?
Eric Olson. Actually, ironically, they have a waiting list. The City of Vero Beach has a series of rolling contracts that basically, depending as to when your contract is, that basically sets your particular rate. Their intent in discussing this with them is that when those contracts expire, there'll be no contracts in the future. It's whatever the rate is. So everybody defaults to that new 88 cents at a minimum, and it could be a pressurized system at a higher rate like that. Interestingly enough, the City of Vero Beach, except for wet weather situations where nobody wants it, they have a waiting list, a long waiting list. And one of the things, just to kind of add to what Joe was talking about, Indian River County is kind of one of the things that we really haven't publicized a lot. We've talked about it. We have a lot of ongoing projects. We actually have nearly $5 million in projects on process right this minute. Pipeline projects, tank projects, all of which are designed to basically bring the majority of our reuse water ultimately over to the barrier island. When we talked about earlier Sea Oaks, our intent is to basically serve the barrier island. So we have a lot of planning and actual construction underway to serve the barrier island. And in fact, recently we've had discussions. We have a draft agreement with Johns Island East. Their biggest concern wasn't the rate. It wasn't the rate that they brought to the table. As they wanted to know predictability. They wanted to be in a position to say, okay, if you tell us what the rate is, if it's 56 cents or if it's, as Commissioner Solari suggested, it's 75 cents, just tell us what it'll be today, tomorrow, and 5 years from now. Don't give us something that's going to move around and give us a moving target. We're prepared, after this is approved, we hope when everything is said and done, to actually bring this month, if possible, a contract with Johns Island East. So to get back to your point, is the City of Vero Beach facing a diminishing capability based on rates? It appears not, on the opposite. And in our particular case, most of our new customers will be people that we're going to be relying on the beach, because they're facing a terrible situation relative to St. John's and also DEP relative to their using their own wells.
And that's my follow-up question to that, too, is I don't know what the cost would be to put in a well, get the permitting, do the maintenance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Compared to a flat rate of 75 cents or 58 cents or 88 cents, whatever it is. And I don't want to be unfair with the rate, but I don't want to have it low enough where we're actually subsidizing and rather than, in other words, if I had a golf course, would I want to go get the permits, drill wells, maintain the pumps and everything else, or would I want reuse? And if I own that golf course, I'm going to look at my annual overhead. So is my annual overhead with a reuse at 58 or even 75 cents per thousand less expensive or more expensive than doing the other option?
Well, it's actually more complex than that, because St. John's Water Management District looks at it from the standpoint, if you have reuse available, there's a real unlikelihood that you're going to be in a position to be able to continue drilling new wells and using potable water. And that's what Johns Island is looking at. Johns Island East has a series of wells.
I understand what you're saying, Eric, but I'm not looking at making somebody do something because we have a kind of a monopoly in it. What's fair to our customer? Yeah. And is 75 cents fair, 58 cents fair, 88 cents fair? I think Commissioner Solari brings up a good point. And again, if I'm looking at it as the owner of that golf course, obviously the things you're mentioning play into effect, but are we being fair with our price, or as fair at 75 as we would be at 58, or are we, or you know, whatever price? Are we being fair at that price?
Commissioner Fleischer? No.
On the onset, I had some concerns about nearly tripling the rate, or a little beyond tripling the rate, but after looking at the study further and now this discussion, I have more concern about raising the value or decreasing the value and raising the price to 75 cents, where we would be multiplying the cost factor to 5 times the initial value that was set forth to the customers. We brought forward a method of conservation and getting the customers used to using the purple pipes and getting situated with reuse water. And I feel at this point to raise it to 75 cents would be a bait and switch at best. It's almost like canceling the recycling program as well. I understand that on the onset, we had to throw it in at bargain price and get everybody accustomed to using reuse water, and 15 cents is most certainly a very shallow number compared to the other jurisdictions that you cite. But 75 cents, I believe, is rather high, and especially during these harsh economic times. And in response, even if we were to delay this until April, I don't know if it'd be enough time to be able to adjust the amount of water that the golf courses consume in order to maintain their fields as well.
I didn't know we were delaying this till April, but I think Commissioner Solari brought out a few very good points, and we were very conservative when we did this. We could change, first of all, we could get a return on our investment, which we haven't included in here. We could also increase our renewal and replacement, because I think we're being very conservative to 10% other than 5%. But I think, and then also look at the cost of subsidizing the first year, the cost of money, and come back. I think that I'd like to come back, make a few changes, and have a rate that's defensible and fair to everybody, and make some changes. We were extremely conservative. We've got some people we're talking to about using reuse, so I think that if we could come back maybe in next week or the following week, run a few scenarios for you, and have a defensible rate, I think I think that'd be a better approach. And we were extremely conservative. I will say that, because we pride ourselves in being very cost efficient, and that's the direction I gave staff. Now, I thought the rate was going to go in effect in about 30 days or 60 days was my impression. And also the idea of putting a rate in effect. We do not want, it was brought up, change it. We're trying to get a rate that's going to stay in place for 5 years minimum. We believe in that.
Joe, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure I want to go any higher than the proposed rate. I think I look at this as the reuse water is a byproduct of our wastewater system, and we have to get rid of it one way or the other. And if we can find a way, and Commissioner Wheeler, I'd like to make this the cheaper alternative, instead of a golf course having to drill another well and using potable water. I'd like us to be the cheaper alternative to encourage them to use reuse water. I think that's the more sustainable thing to do. So, and I think if we look at this another 3 or 4 years and then do a rate adjustment, would be appropriate. But I'm not sure I'm ready to go any higher than the proposed rate.
Well, let me just one clarification though before what you just said. I'm not suggesting that we encourage them to drill another well. I was asking at the cost differential, because people running a business are going to look at the cost, and they may not like a rate coming in for something, but they're not going to get angry about it and pay more money and go through more hassle to do something other than that, like drill a well or so. And my reason for asking that question is to know, or to get an idea of the cost, and looking at it as what's legitimate, not only for them but for us, and what's fair. Mm-hmm. Not holding something over their head because we can, but what's a fair rate? Right. And I think Commissioner Solari makes a good argument for the higher rate, and I could live with bringing this back in a few weeks and getting more information.
Okay. Commissioner Solari.
I've got 2 things. I'd like to build on a few things that Commissioner Wheeler said. One is I just want to bring out something that the Utilities Department gave me yesterday, and that's the City of Vero Beach's pricing for off-peak non-pressure customers. They already in 2008 set a series for 84 cents in 2008, going up to 88 cents in 2009, 90 cents in 2010, and 93 cents in 2011. So while a rise to 75 cents is great, it's still a lot under the local market in other markets. That's one thing. The other thing is you can look at this water in 2 ways. One as a waste product, and the other is a valuable commodity. And I think we look at it more as a very valuable commodity. And we talk about golf courses using it, but the City of Vero Beach has a lot of pent-up demand because they can't supply enough. And there are a lot of customers who can't get it. And some customers have even done irrational things, and I know that because I'm one of them. When I went to get an irrigation system on my property, I didn't want to dig a well, but I needed more pressure, so I paid to get there another irrigation line, and I'm paying for potable water to go through my irrigation. I would love the opportunity to hook up to reuse water, but it's not available to me because it's being given away essentially to golf courses and has been for years. But if I got reuse water, it would lower my cost and be more environmentally sustainable. And I think that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people on the barrier island who, if reuse was available, did move from wells to reuse. And I think that in this 5-year period, DEP and St. John's and other organizations are going to pressure us to move in that direction. So,
well, you bring up a great point, because I'll tell you, the city of Vero, I believe a lot of their customers use potable water for irrigation. And that means you're charging top dollar to water your lawn. If the city of Vero made reuse available to you at a lower rate, that cuts their revenue on the potable water side. See what I'm saying? I mean, you're paying $1 1,000 now. If they give you reuse at 50 cents a thousand, they've just lost 50 cents a thousand, and that hurts their revenue. And as we heard from Mr. Wilson earlier, hurts their general fund. So, and I have to question, why is the city of Vero spending millions and millions of dollars for a deep well injection and a multi-million gallon storage if there's this big demand for reuse? And the bottom line is they don't want to sell reuse cheap, because it takes away from their revenue on the potable water side. And I don't want us to get into a situation where we have to do a deep well to get rid of our reuse because our rate's too high that nobody wants to use it.
Well, two things there. One, we don't have to use a deep well because we've got the Spoonbill Marsh, which is a much, much better way of doing it. And two, my understanding is their use of the deep well injection is for wet weather discharge. It's for those times when you can't use it and give it to the customers. So it's for things which wouldn't occur under your scenario. So again, everything that we've done in the past suggests that maybe a 56% rate is right. But I think that if you're looking forward to the next 5 years, the higher rate actually does a better job. It will be more environmentally sensitive, more sustainable, and better for all the customers. But I'm happy to take the vote. I think
I'm enjoying the debate. This is nice.
Pretty well today.
And your comments were well, Wesley. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm good with this. I don't know. I'll never have reuse.
All right. Chairman,
West.
We do have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, second by Commissioner Wheeler, to approve the rate study, but to change the rate to 75 cents per 1,000 gallon. Any final comments? Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, and again, just one other comment on the 56-cent rate. You're stating that on 2011 we will have stabilization and recovery as far as the value to the customer and the value to the county?
Yes, sir. Essentially, the difference between 56 cents and the rate you see at the bottom of Table 4-2, for example, in 2011 is 54. So you would have 2 cents per 1,000 gallon surplus that would be used to eliminate that deficit that you incurred in fiscal year 2010. And you would have that differential in 2012 of 9 cents, et cetera, et cetera.
So ballpark, somewhere around mid-2011, we will have eliminated all past deficit?
That's provided the assumptions this is projected.
That we continue the use?
We've been very conservative in our assumption. We had to project our costs in the future. So provided that we are accurate in our projected costs, we will.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Yeah, I would, I'll stay with my second, but I would ask Commissioner Solari if he would be objectionable. I have a motion to move this back to staff until the 19th and bring it back, which rather than trying to figure out, because it's complicated, rather than trying to figure out how to bring it back in 2 weeks.
As I said, as I indicated, being I was sort of pulling that number out of the air, I would think it would be much better if we went back to staff, got a little better idea of cost. I mean, one of the things with cost is that, again, a philosophical difference, you base renewal and replacement on a percentage of revenue, which I couldn't possibly justify with my background. I'd put it as based on depreciation or some other expenses, actual expenses. And as an example of that, if we based renewal and replacement on our prior pricing, we'd only get a couple $1,000s for renewal and replacement. Or if you were like the City of Vero Beach Electric in the last year, where fuel costs suddenly spiked, but you're basing it on a percentage of revenue, then you'd be overstating it. So philosophically, I just have a difference there. So I'd be very happy to amend my motion to send it back to staff to try to firm up some of the assumptions and to look forward over the 5-year period, because I agree
Okay.
with the consultant and with the administrator that having a set rate for the 5 years is a good thing. So
I'll second.
Commissioner Davis, if this comes back, you'll get to enjoy this debate all over again.
Oh, absolutely. It's nice to see two philosophical opinions here get aired out in public, so y'all are doing a great job with it.
All right, so we have an amended motion to have staff bring this back on the 19th with some revised figures and a different rate. Second by Commissioner Wheeler. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Can I get some clarification real quick? So when we come back, we satisfy. We'll come back with 2 or 3 scenarios. One, we'll look at that deficit we had and repaying it and the cost of money. We'll increase our renewal replacement, and we'll look at, we were maybe too conservative in our costs and our projections of new customers coming online quicker than they may come in. So we'll look at all those things. And
could you put that back up, Cindy, and come back with the discounted cash flow?
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that left off two lines, which would include, say, after the rate per gallon, you'd have the deficit and then have a cumulative, because it'll show a deficit in dollars the first year and then as it draws down, but then what the value is with a reasonable capitalization rate, so we have some idea financially whether it really covers.
Okay, and a rated return on our investment too.
That you can toss that in if you like.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we're cleared. Thank you all very much. We'll see you on the 19th. With that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We will be back at 11:05. Call the meeting back to order. We finished up with the utility services. That takes us to the county attorney. Item 13A, the McGriff ship loan. Will?
Mrs. McGriff unfortunately passed away in a generator accident with two of her children, and the county had made a ship loan on the property, which was the second mortgage. The estate has been in probate for a couple of years, and they had made one offer to the ship loan committee to, which I think the ship committee wanted $2,000. They didn't have that much money in the estate. So basically what the estate is saying is, please elect one of these options. Take the total estate assets of $1,583 and record a satisfaction of the county mortgage to free up the property, or allow the estate assets to be distributed to Ms. McGriff's parents, withdraw our claim against the state, but leave our mortgage lien, and try and collect any funds that might be available on a sale of the house. Right now, the house is listed at $65,000, but there are $70,000 in mortgages on it. So whether we would get any more than this after commissions and closing costs if the house was to sale is questionable. And to just wrap up the matter, it's my recommendation that we take the total estate assets of $1,581 and record a satisfaction of the mortgage in exchange and let them move on.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Solari, to take staff recommendation. I do have a question, though. Will, what's the balance, do you know, of the primary mortgage?
The first mortgage?
Do we have that information, the first mortgage? Okay, the primary is 58. Okay, so with our 20, then it's at 78. So that'd be, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
I guess really, I would like to see, or have at least one question answered before I make the decision. And one of them clearly is I do want to help put some resolve to the estate. So I'm all in favor of that. There might be an opportunity here with us already having about $20,000 of taxpayer dollars through the SHIP program out and no equity or in the estate going back to the family. Is there any opportunities, or have we approached perhaps Habitat for Humanity? They have a financing arm. They have a clientele that's ready. They might actually have somebody that can move in there. I don't know for that price or not, but it's something that I think we would look at. And if we are going to give a reduction of a SHIP loan, in my opinion, it should be for something along those lines that is a nonprofit organization versus a private investor.
I think the real question is, will Habitat or anyone want to pay above market price just to be nice people? And if it's listed at 65 and their closing cost, the principal mortgage is almost 59.
I don't know. Okay, and I understand what you're saying, but before I make a decision on giving away $19,000, I'd at least like for Habitat to look at it, tell me what they think, and to see if because one of the things that's affecting the value right now is for the ability for somebody to get a loan. People that are going through the Habitat process, they have the ability to get financing through their sweat equity and through the Habitat for Humanity model. Now, if the house is in that kind of shape or what, I don't know, but before I make the decision on this, I'd like to have that question.
In order to get our $20,000 back, the house would have to sell for $79,000, $80,000 or so. And if the market is listing at 65 and it hasn't been sold, I just think that's unlikely that Habitat would be willing to pay that much over market just to help us out.
But I think what Commissioner Davis is saying is maybe Habitat would pay the $58,000 outstanding balance on the primary, and we would roll the SHIP loan over to the new resident, because when that house was first built or sold, it was $63,000 plus our 20. It's an $83,000 home. So
you'd be asking the new resident to go underwater immediately, though, to assume a second mortgage that the market price won't support.
And I would reiterate what I'm saying is, if I'm going to give a discount of any kind, I would rather it go to a nonprofit organization versus a private investor in the event that I have to make that decision. And I'd like to make that decision relatively quickly to give the estate some resolve here. I understand what they're going through and very sympathetic to that. But I can't approve option 1 or 2 without knowing that, and I don't have that information today.
Okay. Commissioner Fleischer, any comments? We do have a motion from Commissioner Wheeler for staff recommendation. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2 with Commissioner O'Brien and Davis dissenting. That takes us to 13B. This was originally item 8G under consent. It's Lewis Barton reduction in lien. Will?
The county, about 15 years ago, recorded a lien on the Barton property for violation of the building plans. Generally speaking, he had plans approved for a 2-story building and built a 3-story building, or 3 and built a 4. And that lien was out there. Barton subsequently got a number of mortgages on the property. One ultimately foreclosed. There's a letter from the attorneys for the foreclosing lender offering to compromise the lien on the property at $60,000. In my discussions with them, I'd said that we would support a reduction to the $80,000 to $100,000 range, which was more equivalent to some of the expenses we've incurred in litigating with Mr. Barton over the years in federal court, defending the building official, the code enforcement officer, the chairman of the code enforcement board, etc. Since I put this staff report together, where I have suggested that you reject the $60,000 offer and advise on a counter offer, I received a phone call from the title company that will be paying off for the bank, and they have made an oral offer of $82,000, and if they followed through on that, I would support doing a satisfaction of the lien for $82,000 should they deliver the check. It's really here for your consideration whether to accept the $60,000, accept the oral offer of $82,000, or reject the offer. The risk in rejecting it is that a code enforcement lien is good for only 20 years. It can't be renewed. We're about 15 years into that process, and if you see Mr. Jacobs' letter, the litigation to foreclose the last lien took over 6 years. So going back a little bit to Mr. O'Brien, what you mentioned about Palakwich, mutual resolution, a mutually resolved solution being better than a winning a fight, but the other way of saying it is a bad compromise is better than a good lawsuit. I'd recommend if we can get the $82,000 that was orally offered, that we have a satisfaction authorized.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Wheeler.
In looking at this, I understand that perhaps with our lien that this property could be perhaps upside down. I don't know that to be a fact, though. What we have here, I don't see an offer. I don't see a purchase and sale contract. I don't see anything to really justify other than a would you take in front of us. And I think we owe it to the taxpayers for what this has been put through. Also, the residents that live on Surfside Terrace. I want to see this get back into the residential use, and that we may have to make that decision further down the line. But at this point, we're being asked to make a decision based on a convenience versus a necessity. And therefore, I am not willing to do anything today without a little more information in front of me as far as a purchase and sale.
Okay. Is that a motion to deny staff recommendation?
I'll do it.
Then I'll second that.
We have a motion to deny from Commissioner Davis with a second from Commissioner Fleischer. Commissioner Wheeler, discussion?
Yeah, I basically agree with Commissioner Davis, but the mortgages that are held and the mortgages held on this, what was the time frame in relation to the liens that were placed and all this stuff started?
Our lien was 5 years prior to the mortgage that was foreclosed.
And so he got a mortgage actually with our lien on the property?
The lender made the loan even though our lien was on the property, and that's why the title company is interested in paying off.
See, and that's what concerns me. I mean, the mortgage company did something that probably they shouldn't have done, and if they'd have been paying attention, they wouldn't have. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for the situation they're in. And I understand what you're saying, but I also agree with Mr. Davis. I support his motion.
And I also, Commissioners, I'm not sure what they have it on whether it's on the market right now. If it's 300,000, I understand that there may, and I just heard through the grapevine, there may be actually a title policy that has been enforced based on some faulty title work that has been paid in some compensation to one of the financial institutions. And again, I mean, if they lay more in front of me in black and white, I'm all for moving this project into a residential use for the residents of Surfside Terrace so that everybody can move on. But until then, I think that we owe it to the taxpayers to get more information before we make a decision.
One other question, Will. Something I wasn't aware of. You got a 20-year limit on a lien, so if you got a lien that has an accumulating fine on a daily basis.
Well, this is not accumulating. This is a fixed amount.
No, but I'm saying that where does the 20-year gap start? Are you saying at the end of 20 years it just goes away?
It starts when you record the code enforcement lien in the public records.
And then in 20 years it goes away?
Correct. So if the property sits there and you don't get a purchase and sale contract in the next 5 years, the lien's gone and you get nothing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion to deny staff recommendation. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you. There's no commission items. We move to item 15, Special Districts and Boards, Solid Waste Disposal District. Item 1, engineering work order number 25 to Geosyntec Consultants for engineering and permitting services for 5-year landfill operations permit renewal. Memorandum dated December 21, 2009.
Move staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Solari, second Commissioner Davis. Any further discussion? Himanshu, is there anything you wish to add?
No. Good morning, Himanshu at the Solid Waste Disposal District. Just want to add that we are on a tight schedule here, but we have assurance from our consultant that we should be able to submit this in a timely manner within our deadline.
Okay. Well, then we'll proceed to vote right away. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you very much. And that takes us to item B2, final payment and release of retainage to Waste Management, Inc. of Florida for the vertical expansion and partial closure of Class 1 landfill and Barrow Pond construction projects. Memorandum dated December 11, 2009.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any discussion? Hearing none, we proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen, and no further business to be conducted today. This meeting is now adjourned.